Very pleased to have with us from UT San Diego, Stephen Greenhut. Stephen, thank you for your time, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We've been paying a lot of attention to what's going on in Colorado. The Senate and Assembly Appropriations Committees voting out a number of bills last week. And, California, you write about the continuing gun control push. Is it more than just closing quote-unquote loopholes? That's what we're hearing in Sacramento, right? These are just about closing loopholes?
Well, that's what they say, and it seems to, they being the proponents like Senate President Darrell Steinberg, it's always loopholes, but obviously there's never going to be an end to the loopholes until you can't have illegally own a gun.
Yeah, and to that end, the phrase assault weapon is a made-up phrase. It means whatever you want it to mean. Basically, it means gun I want to ban. And we're seeing a new definition of this in California. Basically, any centerfire rifle that's semi-automatic that can accept a magazine would be banned. You could no longer purchase it. You could no longer you could keep the ones you possess, right? But you can't buy any more in California.
Right, and then there are all sorts of we'll have to have background checks to purchase ammo. They call them banning these mega magazines, which I think is just 10 rounds. I'm not, and my apologies. I'm not. I have a couple shotguns in the closet, but I'm a columnist, reporter. I don't know much about firearms. I do know about infringements on our liberties. And that's what's going on here, and it's a never-ending, it's a never-ending slippery slope. I mean, everyone says slippery slope, but it is. I mean, it's not going to stop at any point. They're requiring safety classes and certifications, which we have now for handguns. Mm-hmm. They're going to require them for long guns. There's bans on lead ammo. That's more of an environmental lobby type bill that would ban the use of lead ammo in hunting, which I know enough to know that doesn't leave many options. And and then what I talked about in my column is they're expanding the categories of people who are not allowed to own guns. They're going to be on this apps list, and the State Department of Justice is sending armed agents door to door to confiscate weapons from those people who, let's say, purchased them legally and then were later convicted of a crime or fit one of the many categories of even misdemeanors that puts you on the prohibited list. Mm-hmm. Then they send people door to door, and of course, two-thirds of those people are not people who've been convicted of any crime. The state, big surprise here, doesn't do a very good job keeping the list updated, so they go after guns from people who can legally have them. I believe that's the infrastructure for gun confiscation. Am I exaggerating, do you think?
Well, I mean, my colleague Jenny Simone has actually done some stories on the APPS program and have talked to both law enforcement who have a real problem with how this is being administered, as well as individuals who feel like they were unfairly targeted by this program. So no, I mean, you quote. And I love, by the way, that you quote The Offspring. You quote The Offspring's "The future is now." Now who's knocking on your door? And you say, soon that could be somebody from California DOJ going after that recently banned firearm. While all of this is going on, Stephen, I'm seeing stories. LA Times had a big story yesterday about violent criminals doing days behind bars when they should be doing months or years behind bars. There is an overcrowding problem in California. You guys don't have enough room for your violent felons, and yet the lawmakers in Sacramento don't seem to want to deal with that, and they want to try to take guns away from the law-abiding people.
Well, there's a lot of truth to that. Although the prison system, which is a complete mess. Basically, though, it's not it's phony. The Democrats, the Jerry Brown, is saying, well, we have to spend more money, or we have to let more dangerous felons out, which is absolutely nonsense. It's largely about protecting prison guard union jobs from outsourcing prisoners, and we could, I believe we need a dose of sentencing reform here. I mean, there's such a large percentage of the people in the prisons are there for drug offenses and things like that. So I think that gets I think they're trying to scare us, but your point is the right one, that they're creating new categories of crime for people who really are not criminals, right? Criminalizing people for doing various things, and ultimately that could mean time in prison. But but what's really upsetting, I think, is the complete lack of even discussion or concern about the whole idea of the Second Amendment right. That's just as if it doesn't exist. It's just an obliteration. So the question is where does it end? And I'm concerned with the APPS program, that let's say we end up with full registration, and then there are different guns that are being banned retroactively. Then do they send the agents door to door to take my shotgun, which I purchased legally, and then 2 years from now it's no longer legal? And I assume, I think that's reasonable to suspect that they might eventually do that. The other thing I like to point out is, let's look at how public officials behave with guns. I mean, we have so many examples of police misusing their firearms. There was just a case of 2 L.A. deputies who got in an argument at a campground and started firing their weapons. So when they talk about disarming average people, they're not talking about disarming, officials of the state. So all that means, liberals have to love guns, right? Because guns are what enable them to enforce all the laws they like. So I don't see that people in authority have been really great stewards of firearms. So it just disarms the rest of us.
Yeah, sadly, and as you say, Stephen, there's so little talk legislatively on the part of those who want to go after guns to even recognize the Second Amendment, to even acknowledge that there is a right here, and instead it's almost as if they just want to try to wish that right away.
It's sad but true, and I live out in the country, not far from Sacramento. Actually, I cover the capital area as a columnist, not down in San Diego, but all my neighbors have guns, and it's a pretty safe place. So their argumentation is pretty weak.
I would agree with you on that. So what do you think the chances are of these really bad bills getting to Governor Brown's desk?
Oh, yeah, I think almost certainly they will get to his desk, and no one can really guess what he's thinking. But and there's been some political changes, a couple seats in the Central Valley, or one seat in particular that went to a Republican. So there might be some modest political pressure pushing back against, in the Central Valley, in the rural farm heartland of California. I mean, there's, even among Democrats, there's a much stronger support for gun rights. So I don't know. I've learned not to guess what Governor Brown's going to do, but I would say that gun rights activists are in a pretty sad position if they're depending on Governor Jerry Brown to be their last line of defense. It's not a place I think most people would want one of their constitutional rights to reside with.
Yeah, I think that's a fairly good statement there, Stephen. Listen, I really appreciate you coming on the program and covering these issues in California, and would love to have you back on once we see what gets to the governor's desk.
Yeah, that's good. I appreciate it. And then plug for the Union Tribune, UT San Diego, utsandiego.com, so your listeners could keep up with the news there.
Absolutely. You guys are still producing news even without Bob Filner making headlines every day.
It's hard to believe. But anyway, well, thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you, Stephen. Stephen Greenhut joining us from the Union Tribune in San Diego, utsandiego.com.